when we were trying to visualize moving the RV park up to the property next to the McDonald's and then turning what is a gravel area now for the RV park into green space. I agree with you 100%. The RV park would not block the views and vistas from 99E looking out towards the river. It actually moves the RV park probably further out of the floodplain also.
It does, yes.
Higher, which is positive. But just restoring the riverfront property back to a natural state really, again, makes that such a jewel for the residents in the Cove and just about anybody who wants to come down there and visit. The trees that are in the park right now are very established, mature, just special trees. And we want to try to save as many of those as we can and in the new redesign. So thank you for that update. We really appreciate it. And wish you the best of luck as it goes forward. Well, Brian mentioned Jerry Herman's name quite a bit. So now we're going to bring in our last panelist. Jerry is the guru when it comes to water resources. He has several committees that have been involved over the years in looking at how we can better utilize the Willamette and the Clackamas River for various types of uses, whether it's fishing, recreational, or just the beauty of it. So Jerry's going to talk a little bit about the mitigation programs that are available to go ahead and enhance the water quality in the Cove and how part of the area surrounding the Cove could be turned into a special park. So Jerry, you want to take it away?
Yes, sir. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to start out with the North End District. This is exciting. We're going to discover the North End District from that Abernathy Bridge all the way to the top of your screen is the North End District. 500 acres I want to refer to today that are potentially available for some assistance if we'll get our act together and start looking at other resources that could be available to us. You can see the Cove at about 2 o'clock in the upper part of that photograph. We're going to go to the next slide here for just a second. Thank you, Sherry. Sherry's just great. I scared her half to death today with all this stuff I unloaded on her. Look at those red blobs. Those red blobs are not forest fires. They're not city fires. Those are opportunity areas. By the way, there's a green one right across from there where I grew up in West Lynn. High upon a hill so noble stands our West Lynn High, even to this day. All right, those red blobs refer to areas that mitigation or alternative funding could help solve some problems, such as Clackamas Park. Things Brian talked about. I want to give credit to everybody that's been on this program today, because everybody that's been on this program today was a part of the River Assets and Opportunities Task Force, including the Economic Development Director for the city in the past, and the Parks Director and others. We had a commissioner or two, Frank O'Donnell, show up. And that group helped me look at some of these ideas that have come together today for you to look at what can we do on a bigger scale. Clackamas Park needs help. You heard that from Brian. The Cove is more than water quality. There's lands that were never designed for development in the Cove. There were ancillary lands that could be enhanced with other funding sources, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Dan Fowler's efforts and the end of the Oregon Trail along Washington Street and all things that have happened with private investment could be assisted by funds if those funds are used to improve environmental assets, water quality, fish and wildlife values. Songbird sounds good, doesn't it? Sounds like green thinking. Well, there's a green thinking group out there called the Mitigation Banking System. Let me talk about that for just a second. In Portland, back in World War II, the center of our World War II effort in the Northwest region was a Portland Harbor and up in Vancouver. And many of those businesses had impacts on the environment that were not important at that time. It was important to win World War II. After World War II, from the Broadway Bridge down to the Columbia River, 15 miles, Governor John Kitzhaber, in his wisdom, said, we don't want a Superfund site there. We want to get those businesses, city and others, together to solve their environmental problems that they created in World War II and thereafter in commerce. We're going to establish a mitigation trust fund, the Lower Harbor Trust Fund. So Governor Kitzhaber got people to do that, and into that pool About $1 billion went over time to begin to solve problems in the lower harbor. Governor Kitzhaber lost his fight against having it become a Superfund site because environmental folks more extreme than myself decided that it should be a Superfund site. So now EPA controls everything for the last 15 miles from the Broadway Bridge to the Columbia River. But those businesses would rather expend monies to clean up what they have to and then enhance upriver resources all the way to the end of the Lower Harbor Trust Fund District, which is Willamette Falls. So we're going to go to the next slide for just a moment. I gave you that background because what is he talking about? 1990s plan here for the Cove and Washington Street and the North End District was done by Clackamas County and the city. This is 1990. It shows the Oregon City Shopping Center to the left, Clackamas Park to the top, the Clackamas River joining the Willamette, and of course the Cove. And it also shows Washington Street with all sorts of improvements for people and wildlife. Guess what? We've had 30 years to get this thing going, and I think it's time to get with it and get some of these things done. Phase 1 of the Cove is complete. Phase 2 has to do with additional improvements and also facilities for housing and things like that. But this master plan is interesting to me because its concept area was the entire North End District. 30 years old. This was adopted as a master plan in 1990. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, what is a mitigation district? Well, some could say, well, what is a mitigation district? It's a district that comes together to solve a problem. And how does it work? What is its method? The city must declare, any city who wants to participate, or any entity, including private developers, by the way, a mitigation interest and establish a mitigation process with professionals. Professionals assist in identifying opportunities along with the city or the private developer, whatever it happens to be. Agencies then like Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and many others participate in looking at the realistic aspects of the benefits of the plan. That is part of it. The mitigation bank that can provide the funding is then requested to support the funding. Then if the city or the entity, private developer, or whoever likes the concept, then the professionals work through funding by the mitigation bank, not by the city, not by the private developer, and they begin to design the project. Those professionals, there's a cursor in the way. Is that our cursor? Get our cursor out. Okay. The professionals then begin the process of letting contracts and overseeing the project. That means managing the project. So other people don't have to do the work. They are the experts that know how to do the work in concert with the hosting city or private developer. Projects may involve youth or volunteers. My dream is to see 1% of these kind of projects like goes to art. 1% of the future go to youth in our area. One city commissioner asked me, what's in this for you, Jerry? I said, you know what? I'm happy and I'm satisfied with life, but I want my youth and probably 1,000 other from Oregon City Senior High School to play a role in these projects, which I'm going to show you a little bit more. Trails, habitat, recreation, they're all eligible. They all have to pass a test of benefiting fish, wildlife, and the environment, though. They must do that. The mitigation projects then are maintained in perpetuity. This can't get better. The mitigation fund supports the long-term maintenance of improvements. And then if the city or the private developer wants to have some kind of support come back to him for providing him or her or the entity for providing the resource of land, a host fee then goes back to those parties. Let's continue. Next slide. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What others have got, somebody said to me, this is just too good, Jerry. Where did you come up with this? I said, you know what? I was the Parks and Recreation chairman for the city of Gladstone for a while when this came to them, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And the city couldn't believe it either. But let's talk about what some cities have gotten. City of Portland, over 1,000 acres of city-related and adjoining commercial lands along the river in that lower 15 miles, the Lower Harbor Trust Fund area, have been enhanced with this trust fund. They're now being maintained by the trust fund. Remember, their desire is to get out of the business of making all the habitat be number one. They still want to use their land, so they're happy to invest in other upriver areas where the habitat is really better and the possibilities of spawning fish and so forth occurring would be more predictable. City of Gladstone, our next door neighbor, 4 years ago entered into agreements with the Lower Harbor Trust Fund and other resources like that, have had 3 parks rebuilt, says rebuilt, totaling nearly 100 acres. Those parks now include a lot of wildlife elements. One particular park, Meldrum Bar and Meldrum Slough, there's close to 50 acres in that one park alone that were never usable by the public that are now usable by both people and wildlife. There's actually spawning potential for fish at Meldrum Bar, of all things. You'd never believe it. Doll Beach Park, right across from Clackamet Park, by our boat ramp, has received about 20 acres worth of improvements there. City of Milwaukee heard about this. While Oregon City was considering this whole thing, the City of Milwaukee, under the leadership of Mayor Gamba and his commission, said, we're going to do this. We want to see Kellogg Creek restored. We want to see wetlands enhanced. We want to see a non-performing fishway, which has never worked, taken out. And we want potentially up to 100 acres of our lands made available to this process. They had to commit $25,000 for the initial study, which, by the way, Oregon City already did that to get it going. But once the study to determine eligibility and opportunity areas was defined, then the trust fund takes over. City of Milwaukee's underway right now. Let's go to the next slide. All right. What we might get, first of all, I must tell you the city in 2017, when we took this concept, our River Assets and Opportunities Task Force group, to the city agreed to get it as a part of a DDA, due diligence agreement for the code process, let the developer and the city include mitigation as a strategy. That strategy still exists as an adopted principle of the city. Improvements to Clackamet Park could occur, trails, habitats, interpretation and education facilities, improvements to Clackamet Cove, trails, fishing, fishing outlook areas for seniors and others, birding sites, riparian habitats, which means riverside or cove-side habitat improvements. All of this was planned to occur through private development. Some of this can occur through the trust fund. Washington Street improvements. What would we do on Washington Street? Guess what? All the drainage of Washington Street heads towards Clackamet Cove. That means end of the Oregon Trail as a potential site for some simple projects of bioswales and things like that. Beautification with, of course, a trails and theme. Wouldn't we want that, Gail? Those kind of things would go on into Clackamet Cove master planning as a part of the mitigation district that we're talking about here. Some other improvements that could occur at Metro South. There's a transfer station. There's a wetland there that was built a long time ago. We participated in building that nobody seems to understand. And there's all this adjoining land where brand new wetlands were built when the jug handle, when I talk about a jug handle, I think, have you been drinking? No, I haven't. The jug handle was a project, of course, to realign the access and make possible the river's development and so forth. Whatever the case, 12 acres of wetlands that were built that have beautiful characteristics, but they're off limits to the public. Not because they were designed that way, because nobody included that. They could be included, and a passage right underneath Interstate 205 exists that was put in for cattle and horses, and that could be the passage into Clackamet Cove to connect everything together in a beautiful streetscape, drainage, and beautification project. Let's go to the last slide here, if there is one more. All right, the North End District. It can include these kind of things. And then many of these areas can be assisted through mitigation funding if we'll now move forward on that subject. Remember, Gladstone's gotten over 10 million in improvements plus a host fee every year from that trust fund now. They're being maintained in perpetuity. Milwaukee is underway for the same thing. Lake Oswego is looking at this with real desire. Let's get busy and get Oregon City on the radar again and get our project, which was initiated, mitigation study. Let's get it done and get back in the queue for some assistance at Clackamas Cove and the things we've talked about. If you need any additional information, let's go to the last slide here. You can give us a call. Rivers of Life Center, we're the ones that are kind of helping orchestrate the work of the River Assets and Opportunity Task Force. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving, we're going to meet. And Brian, you're right, I roped you into it. And boy, you did a great job on that master plan concept for Clackamas Park. That's what we do, is we look at different things that individuals can contribute towards the process. 8th Street dock below the courthouse, where tour boats could come up, real tour boats, pull in and drop people off. That's one of our projects we're interested in too. But on this North End district, there's an opportunity now. Get a hold of us if you'd like. You know what?
Well, Jerry, you're good. I'm just trying to start my video here again. But in the meantime, well, thank you for that presentation. Obviously, this is a tremendous opportunity that you're discussing about the mitigation program. There we go. You're still on here. You're muted, so you may not be able to respond. How long does it take for a group like those of us in the Oregon City Business Alliance or someone involved with the Cove development to apply for these mitigation dollars?
The city took the first step. Can you hear me?
Yes.
The city took the first step by signing an agreement with an organization called RestoreCap that works with the mitigation bank and professionals in 2017. That happened. Probably another year or two is all that's required to get these projects going once they're identified. It isn't like it takes 5 years of master planning. The initial work's been done. A water quality study was done, and they figured out the Cove has got big water quality problems, which I didn't talk about. That can be corrected too through this mitigation funding. So these things are potentially correctable now.
So could the enhancements of Clackamas Park for more engagement with wildlife and interpretive stations along these new trails also be tied into this mitigation fund?
Absolutely. We consider this from a North End district perspective. Everything I've gone over is eligible. The focus should be initially on the Cove, but the park is right next to the Cove. They go hand in hand.
Right. And the closer you can get from the park to the Cove gets you closer to all the other economic development that's taking place in that North Gateway district, which really is what we're trying to do, is connect people to nature as much as possible. So thank you for that. Tim West, we're going to turn it over to you now. I think we have 6 questions that have been submitted by our participants. If you'd like to start with your first question, and we'll get everybody back on the screen because we're not sure who the question is going to be directed to yet.
Well, we have questions for everybody, and the first is going to go in order of the speakers. Dan, the first question is for you. It's how will the hotel and apartment developments deal with potential flood issues? That area was certainly seriously underwater during the '96 flood.
Well, we have a great team of people that have looked at all of that. Our quarterback is Lloyd Hill Architects over in West Lynn, and we have civil engineers and natural resource people. You have to do a balanced cut and fill. So the hotel, if you notice back on those slides, it was elevated. There was some rock wall next to Washington Street. It's required by code to be 1 foot out of the floodplain, and that's what we've done. The main floor of the hotel is out of the floodplain, as is the future apartment project. There's a level down below there's actually parking underneath the building. And the elevated residential units, again, will be at least a 1 foot out of the floodplain. Then there's a connecting path out of the floodplain that would take in an emergency those people to safety.
All right. So there's one more question for you, Dan, and it appears that the railroad quiet zone is going to be difficult, if not impossible, to accomplish due to cost. Does that affect your project of putting the hotel rooms and housing next to the tracks?
We actually took a look at the noise. We did an acoustic study. We had sound receiving equipment over a 24-hour period that actually recorded sound for a full 24 hours. Every train that went by, everything. And then we modeled from that acoustic study the type of construction that would be needed to muffle that sound. So it's amazing what you can do with construction methods, with RC channel, resilient channel. It's a vibration separator of sound, and with window patterns and window design. So we've taken the noise into account. The last thing we would want is either from a residential standpoint or a hotelier to be bothered by that. Now, it is next to the track. There's going to be a little bit of sound. There's going to be a little vibration. But through that study and then the building methods, we're able to mitigate it to a huge degree. But one other thing I just wanted to mention, when built under, let's just say, normal pre-COVID conditions, this hotel will generate over $260,000 a year in hotel motel tax money. It'll be quite a big boost to the Civic Improvement Trust and to local committees that can use that funding to further enhance projects surrounding tourism. So we're anxious to get it going.
Very good, very good. So the next question is for Gail. And this one is, have the tribes indicated any thoughts regarding the end of the Oregon Trail somehow tie in to the development of the Blue Heron or the Riverwalk? Gail, you have to unmute. Oh, can you
You're
unmute?
muted, Gail.
Well, I have,
There we-
yeah.
There we
My
go.
screen must be dirty or something. I don't know. So it's interesting you say that because, you know, part of our long-term dreams is to have a plank house and the post down at the center. And I asked John George the other day about how we should start working on that project. And we look at it as, you know, being a visitor center, we're bringing in a lot of people from a lot of different areas, and they usually or oftentimes will start at the center, and then our job is to get them through town and through the state and you know, all along the trail. So yeah, we are going to start working on some of those things. We just look, it's another way to market each other, because we send them to their museum too. Right now we have some maps and things, and inside the visitor center we have videos that show their museum. And so, yeah.
Very good, very good. All right, so the next questions go to Brian Shaw. And I have a couple of them on the boat ramp. So unless the state board, Marine Board, has changed their position, they have been adamant at pursuing a $250,000 payback for the existing ramp should Oregon City decide not to follow the Marine Board requirements to locate the new ramp where the Marine Board requires. And this is another one associated with that is why does the state feel that a ramp located so close to the existing ramp would survive the current, knowing that an angular ramp reduces the effect of the current? So how about those boat ramp questions, Brian?
Well, I know that the repair of the existing ramp money from the Marine Board was time sensitive. And I don't know what happened after that. So this is news if they're coming back after that money for some reason. I'm not sure, because it must have happened after the fact, or for me. But and as far as I'm not sure if the Marine Board is using their decision based on what the consultant said, but the consultant said he didn't say no to whether we could move that 100 feet away and angle it, because right now his proposal was to 300 feet, but it was going to go straight out into the channel just like the existing one. So the thought was there that if you angled it, you could actually pull it up within 100 feet of the ramp and still make it functional and still be able to use the infrastructure there. Don't know the end result of that either, where the Marine Board is. And I think that it sounds like the existing commission is going to have a work session or something on that. So that would be interesting to see what the latest conversation is with the Marine Board on the.
Okay, very good. So Brian, here's one more. Do you have any idea on how much seasonal income the RV park brings into Oregon City?
I thought it was $100,000 or something like that. I could be wrong on that. It may not be that much. It could be like 50,000. Right? I do know there was a profit made, which was, I just thought that was, I thought that was kind of interesting. So, and that surprised me, because we did ask the past parks director about that, and they said, yeah, it actually makes money. So I don't know if we take into account all of the things we have to do to that park when it floods and we have to get it back up and running again, and each year. So yeah, don't know.
Very good, very good. So this next question could go either to Jerry or to Brian, but Jerry, you probably know a little bit more. Any talks or plans for houseboats in Oregon City?
What? Houseboats?
Houseboats.
We're talking about houseboats?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Farther up the River Assets Opportunity Task Force consisted also of the founders of Sportcraft Landing. The marina. I keep getting them mixed up. Kim and her husband, Eric Dye, would love to see floating houseboats built as a part of their development, because the boating public just isn't there anymore. The fishing is diminished, mainly because of the predation by the sea lions and such. So the boat rental spaces in the moorage are going to waste in many cases. And so they'd love to see the upper portion of their operation, beautiful floating homes, which would of course increase the property value on the water property value. And then they would improve their entire facility at Sportcraft. That's again what the River Assets Task Force wants to do. And it's open to anybody, is take these ideas and move forward with them. Houseboats are welcome, yes.
Okay, very good. So one last question, and this is for you, Jerry. So what lessons were learned from the 3 prior projects out of Portland, Gladstone, and Milwaukee? Namely, what were the things that didn't go well and need improvement or could have been done differently?
All right, first of all, I'm going to introduce my assistant here. Come on here, get in the picture here. This guy, if you can see him, he's the one that helps me make this stuff happen, did the graphics. This is Gabriel. Hi. 18-year-old Gabriel, like all these young people that work with us, have special talents. Let me give you an example. Gladstone, when I was on the Park and Rec Board and their chairman for a while, there were problems with the initial contract that didn't allow it to be executed quite as efficiently, but that got resolved. It was a brand new concept of working upriver with new cities. In the case of Milwaukee, that mayor down there, Mayor Gamba, just 3 weeks ago unleashed this whole process on his council, and they're all for it. I don't think that they see any problems at this point. I can't give you an outline, but I can say in Portland, even Savi's Island has a private developer who went after this mitigation strategy, has built a 500-acre development at the upper end of Savi's Island on old industrial land, cleaned it all up, and made it a beautiful housing area. I think if you asked him, it's been nothing but good.
Oh, very good. All right, and we have a couple of questions from William Gifford. William, do you want to speak up and ask your questions for Chris Story?
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, it's not so much for Chris Story, it's for Wes in general. Is that because Chris is an officer with Wes, the Water Environment Services, Chris is legally not allowed to advocate for a measure. We are, as a 501c6, the OCBA can and does advocate for certain things. We have written an argument in favor of the West measure. I think it's important for our listeners to understand that this only is required to be on the ballot because of our city charter. It will only be on residents within the city limits of Oregon City that will have an opportunity to vote on this. That's because there is an activity in the park that is not directly park related, and that's why it has to be on the ballot. It again, as Chris mentioned, it is not a monetary issue. There should be no visible effect on the park other than the potential for improvement to that park. And there is it's more like a formality to get this done. The impact on wildlife habitat and so on, such as spawning areas and so on, is also being carefully attended to. And it should be a no-brainer, but I just want to put in a point of advocacy to get this done. There was a little discrepancy in some of the numbers that you quoted, Chris. Would you like to address that?
Yeah, I spoke too fast. I think I said 2.5 million. The project cost is 21.5 million, and it's still fully funded. So, what's a decimal point, right? But it's still not a money measure, and it's fully ready to be constructed if we get the permission from the voters.
So this will not impact ratepayers' rates. This will not impact property owners' taxes.
Correct. West does not receive property taxes.
Oh, well, I just want to personally thank each and every one of our panelists today for a very informative, very insightful, very entertaining presentation. Each one of the participants that were able to attend our webinar today came away with a lot more information as to what the potential of the North District, that gateway area, how important that actually is for the future growth, and more importantly, a visible climate to outside business who may want to Oregon City. Activity breeds activity. And when you start seeing the cranes for Dan's project, you're seeing people going to the co-location and other types of uses. And we talked about the landfill today. That's a whole nother opportunity that I know is getting a lot of attention. We will have information on that as we go forward. And when that information is available to the public, I'm sure they'll be releasing some press releases, and we'll be sharing all that information with our. Just wanted to also thank two people that are running for office in Oregon City for the City Commission positions, Hayden and Jeff Aiken, registered, participating, and I'm putting out a little challenge to the two of you, as well as our incumbent O'Donnell and Denise McGriff, City Commissioners, as everyone coming up on November 3rd, and the Oregon City Business Alliance would to use our date in October to go ahead and do where each one of the candidates could, out of the topics we discussed today, but also just share their vision, their platform, if they were to be or re-elected, as to how take our city forward during the 4 years of that new term. So Dave, Jeff, Frank, if you're listening to this, if you could respond back to us on the Q&A, so we can mark you down that you are confirmed. Again, it's the 4th Tuesday, October. So at officer 11:30, and we'll try to reach Denise and see if we can get her confirmation as well. I'd like to thank my co-hosts today, William and Sherry Imes, and our questionnaire, Tim West. You guys did a job.
Yeah.
And we, again, yes.
Excuse me, before you wrap this up, in the chat, there is a comment from Commissioner O'Donnell, who answers more directly the question that was posed to Brian Shaw, that it says that the RV park brings in about $130,000 in revenue annually, which is $110K camping fees, $13K in dump station, and $7K in transient lodging. $13,000 in dump station. That's more than I would have imagined. So let's not forget about
They're lined up down there.
Yeah. So thank you for that.
Sorry. All right, well, I appreciate you sharing that with us, William. That actually is a pretty good resource. Whatever man we come up with, we continue to resource down at Clackamas Park. So you gave information. I hope you will respond to our invitation to participate in our forum webinar next month. Again, thank everybody on the panel. I want to thank all of our participants. Stay safe, breathe in some fresh air, and we'll be out of this COVID situation soon. To see you all in October. Being said, see you soon.
Bye.
Right.
Yeah.